We go. So let's stop our share. Hello, hello. Well, welcome to, I guess this is, oh my goodness, week 7 or 8 of our weekly campaign forum. Normally we are focused typically on candidates and residents, but today we're going to briefly talk from our candidates, but really I'm very interested in talking. I see that we have both Kim and Sally on today, and I'm very interested in hearing more about what's going on with Naperville Neighbors United and other diversity efforts there. However, in fairness to our campaign, into our candidates who've shown up here, I'd like to do some brief introductions. Jim, you were first here this morning, so why don't we start with you? Oh, you.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, sorry. My name is Jim Hayes-Loris. I'm one of the Naperville City Council candidates.
Yep, that's that. Okay, and I also see Allison is here this morning. Good morning, Allison.
Hi, how are you guys doing? So good to be here again. I'm Allison Thompson. I'm running for Naperville Park District Board.
Thank you, Allison. I also see that we have Rhonda is also here with us this morning.
Hi. Hi, I'm Mark. Hi, everybody. I'm Rhonda Ansier, running for Naperville Park District Council.
Perfect. And my name is Mark Urda, and I'm also running for Naperville City Council. Today, we have a little bit of a special weekly campaign forum for setup. Is that we're really going to focus more on our discussion topics. We're very excited to have Kim and Sally here, and I'd kind of like to have you take us through the genesis of how this came about and the efforts, and focus on what you are doing to promote diversity here in Naperville. So, Kim, if you don't mind, I'm going to turn this over to you.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Hey, Sally, did you want to hop in first, or we'll tag team it?
Yeah, we'll tag team it. Yeah, I was actually here to listen to you.
Oh.
But I'm happy to help.
Yeah, well, I have to just say Sally has been just a stalwart supporter and very instrumental in with Naperville Neighbors United. So yeah, so my name is Kim White, and my husband is Councilman Benny White, and he is obviously running for re-election. But a few years ago, well, when he was running last time, in his first race, he really talks a lot about bringing the community together and focusing on, celebrating differences, but embracing diversity, which is hugely important. We do live in a very diverse community. I'm not the council person, so I don't know the specifics in terms of percentages, but I know that when my kids were in school, it was approximately 30% or so diverse just in their district. And I'm sure that, well, actually, I know that's changed, because I know in recent years they said that the district was majority minority now. So is that correct, Sally? Did I get that right?
Yes, that is correct. The whole state actually has flipped now.
Yeah, see, I should know that, but I'm not running for office, so I don't need all this stuff. But, diversity is hugely important. And I think it's something that I think everybody should embrace. I mean, it makes us better people. To have diversity of thought at the table is really important. So, but when he was running last time, he really spoke a lot about really getting to know your neighbors. And, I would readily admit that we don't know all of our neighbors, right? But we do know that we have, a great neighborhood with people from different backgrounds here. And so we do try to do what we can to get to know folks. But, oftentimes you find once you start talking to people, I mean, we can all make judgments and stuff, but once you start to talk to people, you really realize that you have much more in common than not. So, when you think about, we all moved to Naperville for whatever reason. In most cases, you were either born and raised here, or you came back, or your job brought you here. And so you chose to live here. And, as you do that, you start to realize that, there's people that, you want to get to know, and you may not know everything. I know for us personally, we, especially when we were in person, we're not anymore with our friends. But if you were to come to our house on a Friday night with our friend base, you would see diversity around the table. And that's really, I think, makes us better people, because we we embrace that diversity. But we all moved here for whatever those reasons were, and oftentimes it's the schools, right? We have excellent schools in our community. The parks, I mean, you know, Allison and Rhonda, you two are running for to continue to make sure that we have an excellent system there. So it's those things that brought us here that we were, you know, similar reasons why we came. And now let's talk about, you know, the diversity kind of that we all make up that diversity that, you know, brought us all here. But now let's talk about what keeps us here. And we really have to get to know our neighbors. So Benny really wanted to do that. And you know, there's some things that happened in Naperville that obviously I think helped to get that started a little bit faster. But Naperville Neighbors then came to be, and we started having these conversations, courageous conversations, like some people like to say, about, you know, differences and what, you know, it is that we all bring to the table. So I'll talk a little bit more about those different, you know, some of the different programs and things that we brought, but I'll turn it over to Sally because she does a really good job of probably explaining this more so than I do. Sally, I'll turn it over to you and then I'll share some other things here in a few.
Sure. And Mark, thank you for inviting me, and hello to all of you, and thank you for all the candidates that are running today. Know that our community really appreciates the sacrifice and the hard work that you are doing right now. I chair the Parent Diversity Advisory Council for District 204. I've been their chair for the last 7 years, and I work to advance the district's commitment to equity and excellence in education. You know, we as a community, both 203, 204, 308, we are much ahead of the rest of the nation. I would say even ahead of the state. So we're in a really good spot where, at least speaking for 203 and 204, we have a director of educational equity at an admin level. So there is a focus on diversity, and more than diversity, I like the word equity, because diversity to me is everyone. We are all diverse from each other. Our lived experience is what counts. And even if I am Indian from the same state and talk the same language and eat the same food, my neighbor is diverse from me because we've had different lived experience. So how do we really bring equity, and how do we validate everyone's voice who lives in our community, and how do we make sure that they feel welcome and a part of the community is what I like to concentrate on. One of the questions I'm often asked, and particularly I would say more a decade ago, is does an organization like PDAC, am I welcome at it? And it could be someone who is of a non-majority ethnicity. It could be somebody of a minority ethnicity. They don't know if diversity applies to them. So that's why I like to emphasize equity and inclusion a little bit more. I think what we are doing is to highlight stories of people, which is really important. When I have a meeting, you know, I often bring in thought experts of the topic that we're talking about, whether it's mental health, whether it is culturally responsive curriculum, which is a hot topic right now. Many of the different topics that we've covered, hiring diverse teachers, making sure even city officials are represented of the constituents that live there. It's important to have the different voices at the table. When you were talking about courageous conversations, you can't really have a courageous conversation if everyone agrees with you. Then you're just having a rally about, you know, about what you believe in. So it is really making sure that you set the tone, you set the respect level and trust to allow people to come at your table and sit there that have a different opinion, and then really be able to listen to them, because that's when the buzzword is growth mindset. That's when that happens. We each come with our own biases to any job that we bring, to even how we raise our kids, what we say, oftentimes have biases, both implicit and explicit. And unless we're willing to sit at the table with somebody with a different way of thinking, a different way of doing things. And then if we need to convince them one way or another, we better have a good argument. We better have a fact-based argument, a data-driven argument of why something would work, and then also be willing to say, okay, this didn't work. We had a great idea. Let's shift. The word of this year is pivot. Let's pivot and see if something else works better. Particularly when we're talking to our youth, I think it's really important, and I hope all of you who are running for elections consider this in whatever role you're going to play, is to listen to youth voices. They always surprise me at my meetings. Many times adults are guarded to say what they really feel. The kids don't care. They come and they tell us the truth. This is how I feel when I have a hijab on in the school. This is how I feel when Black History Month is being taught in my class, but the teacher may not particularly be trained on how to teach it or what to say. And those are the voices we really need to hear, because when we start listening to our next generation, our goal is to make them into individuals that really embrace the foundation of what America was built on, and to continue that. So that's my little spiel about work that I do. I hope I didn't take too long, Mark.
No, that was lovely. Thank you very much. And Kim, I know you want to follow up on that, but I do want to ask a question to both of you in terms of this from a candidate standpoint. What are you looking for in your candidates? What do you want us? This is an important topic for Naperville. We did have quite a tumultuous summer, okay? And again, a summer where really Benny stood very tall, I thought, and did some very strong things. What other things, what are you looking for from candidates? You talk about diversity, and I look at the Park District and I shake my head and say, this is not diversity, okay? We need to see it. So I'm wondering, what are you hoping for in candidates? What kind of topics do you want to see them bring, if you would be so kind?
Yeah, so I will answer that. I just want to say to Solly, just to kind of talk just for a quick second about the Naperville Neighbors United, PDAC, and Success, the group over at 203, we work very closely. It's very parallel, the work that we do. And to her point about the youth, it's so important to have the youth involved in these conversations and having a seat at the table. It's just, again, very, very, very important that we do that. In terms of what we're looking for, or me personally, I'm going to speak as a constituent in this community, right? So what I'm looking for is for folks who, first of all, understand that there is a need for them to listen and to show empathy and to put themselves in someone else's shoes, to speak out. There are some, for whatever reason, could be maybe they're uncomfortable, I'm not sure, but to me, silence is complicit. And so if you're being silent as a candidate, if you're choosing, or an elected official, or if you're choosing to not speak out on it, I can't help but wonder if you're just complicit with some of the things that have happened. So I want candidates to see me, understand who I am, recognize that we may not have the same lived experiences, but understand that my experiences are my experiences. My kids' experiences are their experiences, and they've been different, and we've been very fortunate in this community. We love living here. It's great schools, all those things I said before, but my kids had issues here. My kids experienced racism. I've had some experiences myself personally. So I don't want to feel as though if I am sharing that, and I will tell you, I've gotten this from people. Someone has said, I'm calling BS on Kim. I don't believe her. I don't believe her family has had these experiences. but you haven't walked a day in my shoes, right? So I think there was one event, well, several events all the events that we've done with Naperville Neighbors United, but one specific event that we did after what happened at Naperville Central. That event is where we opened it up for people to just come and share. It was what happened to that young man. As a mother, my heart, I mean, I get chills right now just thinking about it again. And I had received a call right before that event that his mother was going to show up, and she was thinking of showing up. She didn't want to be, you know, she didn't want everyone to know who she was. So throughout that event, and Sally, I'm sure you remember this, we had so many people who openly shared about their life experiences here. Some here in Naperville and some, you know, prior to moving here. To the point where I was looking out at the audience and I could just see throughout that night people in tears. If you don't believe these things happen to people, like I don't even know what we can say or do at that point. This stuff is real and it happens. And it doesn't mean it's unique to our town. It happens everywhere. But it's really how are we going to, what are we going to do to focus on that and understand that as a community, right, we should do our part to ensure that every resident feels comfortable and safe and our kids feel comfortable and safe in school. It's up to us to make sure that that happens. So Sally, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, and I think to that point, just a little story about that meeting. When we planned that meeting as a group, we planned it totally different. We had planned it as a speaker, as a panel. We were talking and people were listening. And within the first 5 minutes, we kind of all looked at each other, Benny, myself, Kim, a few of the other board, and said, we're flipping this meeting. We're just going to sit back and listen. And literally every person in that room had a story of some kind of microaggression. And that's what we have to realize, that these are not just big things. No. These aren't the ones that hit social media and that hit, the news or you're right. These are small things that happen daily in their lives that build up. And particularly when we're talking to our youth, it builds up into this toxicity of I'm not good enough or I am different. And so it's those microaggressions that we have to be very, very cognizant about and intentional if we're the ones doing them to learn how not to do them. So it really is true. That whole Naperville Neighbors United meeting, afterwards, our team sat there and we were blown away with the stories. We all, because we could, we hugged each other. We literally cried together, and it was powerful. And that's our Naperville, I mean, those were our residents. And Mark, to your question, what do we expect? And to me, it's an expectation. It's not even a wish anymore. Yeah. I'm going to be dead honest.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, I want this from our elected officials, is to show up, show up to things that you are not usually showing up for. Get outside of your comfort zone. I say that to my kids all the time. It's okay if you are the only Indian person walking into a room. That should be for everyone, because the lessons you learn sitting there like that are life lessons that you will take with you for the rest of your life. Feel uncomfortable in the situation, own it. If it is an uncomfortable conversation, but show up. That's half the battle. That's even more than half the battle, because you are in a spot and showing solidarity and empathy to a situation where you may not even understand. And the fact that you came is a great comfort to the constituency.
Yeah. And I will just add one last thing to that. There will not be any support from me to a candidate that does not show that they embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. And you know what, you can read it pretty quickly. You can't even try to fake it. So I will tell you that is hugely important to me. And I want to know that candidates have an answer for that they, to Sally's point, that they show up, that they see me, they see people who look like me, and that they're able to show empathy and understanding. Or it's just not going anywhere to that. I'll tell you, it's just not going anywhere.
Okay, I'm wondering if I have some more questions, but before I do, anyone else have any questions for either Kim or Sally? Marilyn, you never have to raise your hand.
I should.
Holly, we'll get you too.
I was at the Naperville United meeting, and it really was a very powerful meeting. And I mean, there's just not having children in the school system. From being in Naperville, I'm not familiar with. I guess I could say there's just lots of things that just really, really shocked me that seem to be common practices in the 21st century. It was just pretty shocking. And I guess also from candidates, it's not just showing up, but it's speaking up, and I will say, I think that the city council, has done a good job, when there has been incidences that it just has not, shuffled them aside. I think, I think that in the last year has been good. And I just would like to throw out, another comment, and I'm going to give just a little background on where I'm coming from. I mean, I came from a lot of the affirmative actions stuff at AT&T after they got sued. I mean, they had to do stuff, and I saw the training and how really great that was to change a workplace. I mean, there's the legal aspect, there's sort of the societal aspect. I mean, I'm going to say the training aspect, but then the other thing, I mean, diversity is really fun. And one thing I don't really see a lot recently, at least in the media, of just coming together and doing sort of fun stuff. I mean, you have to do the training, you have to make sure that the legal stuff is there, but maybe we could do some more community events. And I mean, you're not, and I'm not putting down anything that's being done, but just let me throw some things out. I mean, like, if there's, let me just make up, rather than just having separate ethnic groups sort of do an ethnic day or something like that, just more of an, sort of like a diversity day, where, I mean, it really is just sort of a fun stuff where you actually do get an opportunity to meet people, experience stuff. I went to a library event up in Vernon Hills, and what they did, it was like a tea, and it was organized by their librarians, where they made people shuffle. You got assigned a table and you shuffled around to different tables with tea, and it was incredibly, well attended. It was incredibly fun. It was free, but it gave also an atmosphere that you're not being lectured at. I mean, and again, I'm not putting down, I mean, the educational stuff is absolutely, vital, but maybe we could do a little more, fun things in our community. And maybe even that's something that candidates could sort of support through, SECA and some stuff like that.
I think you hit a very important word there with SECA. I think SECA is doing some really great stuff to promote diversity, be it Naper Pride. I think we have an Indian Day coming up. That's a festival. These are really great things. Okay. Yeah. Anyhow, if
I can add real quick to that, Marilyn, you are so on point, and I will tell you that 2020 happened, and so we had planned some events that were going to bring the community together. And of course, 2020 happened, or COVID happened, and we were not allowed to do that. But you will be seeing some things happening this year from Naperville Neighbors United, for sure.
Fantastic.
Well, as soon as we're allowed to.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say for sure, here, but obviously we are very mindful of COVID and all those restrictions. So.
Absolutely. Holly, you unmute yourself. I see you have a question you'd like to ask or make a comment.
Well, I mean, I want to make a comment. I mean, you asked a really important question about what can candidates do or elected officials for the city council. All too often, I've either sat or viewed city council meetings, and I understand that people have the right to free speech and public comment, but I would like to see when people make comments that are disrespectful, racist, or disparaging to certain communities in our in our city, I would like to see the city council push back a bit. I would like to say, like, see them at least give reminders that people should make sure that their comments are not disrespectful. Because I think that I've just heard some really offensive comments from people in our town at those meetings. And I just feel like just a reminder to people in the chamber that we need to be making sure that we're not doing that in a way, at least something. Instead, it's just left unchecked and it spirals out of control on certain issues, whether that's in regards to development, retail sales of cannabis, or recently in regards to the mosque in Naperville. So I would like to see some way for the council to tone down or say to the public, if they're going down those types of roads in their comments, that that's just not acceptable commenting in a public meeting. I'd like to see some change there.
A very, very good point. I know we have made some changes recently relative to written statements. Some of the written statements, I think, had some invective in it that I'm glad that we're not doing that. I think that the point being made is that, I like to come back to the first word of the Constitution. It's not you, it's not me, it's not us, it's not them, it's not Democrats or Republicans, it's we. We are in it together. And I think as a community, I guess my question is, do you feel that progress is being made in Naperville in these areas? I know there's room to grow, but when I look at across the city and I look at our department heads and I look at our fire department, our police department, it seems to me we might have a little bit more opportunity for greater diversity. Would you agree?
I absolutely agree. And I also think that the council should be very careful as to what they put on their agenda in regards to being divisive within the community on these issues specifically. I had a real problem with what went down in the council in regards to the crime reform bill and wanting to send a veto to the governor. But to me, what happens when we get onto these hot topics, I agree, people have the right to free speech, but I think our council just needs to set a tone where certain types of hate speech is just not allowed in the chamber. And I, as someone who has heard horrible things said about certain communities of color on certain hot topic issues, I would like the council to be setting the tone in regards to public comment, or perhaps when it goes down that road, when the person's done speaking, just remind people in the chamber that we are to be speaking in a way that is not hateful, disrespectful, or racist. Something leaving it unchecked isn't helping. It just keeps happening. So I don't know, some sort of change has to happen. And I agree people have the right to free speech, but it doesn't give them the right to not have consequences for that speech. That's all.
I agree completely. Allison, I see you have your hand up. There's something you'd like to say?
Yeah.
You still have yours up too.
Going back just a few points to something that Marilyn had brought up, which is the idea of play and incorporating, that's what the Park District is at heart, is it's play and it's bringing community together through play. So that's one of the main things that I want to really enact if I'm elected to the Park District Board, is making sure that we're representing all community, where we're representing the entire Naperville community, and we're bringing that culture, because I've seen it with my own kids. The more they are exposed to other cultures, the more understanding they are, the more empathetic they are, and the more we can, as a family, use our white privilege to help these families of color in our community. And I was on a forum a while back with other candidates, and one of the candidates didn't really see a need for this type of programming. And I guess I kind of am segueing into a question for you two, Kim and Sally, of do you see a need for the Park District to represent the community, or do you feel the community is already fairly represented? Because I know my views, as a white woman, I'm not seeing it personally, but I didn't know if there was a need from your communities or from your action with the diversity committee that there is a need for this type of programming, I suppose.
I think there's always a need. That to me, that's not even a question. There's always a need to have representation of, one of the wonderful things the Park District did, and it took a long time, was to have cricket pitches in Naperville. When you have almost now in 204, 39% of your children that are South Asian, and then many from other countries that play cricket, it took a long time for our Park District to realize, rather than another baseball field, let's look into finding a cricket pitch somewhere. So absolutely. But how do you, and you use the word white privilege, the way to get around that is back to where I was saying before. You have to show up and understand the community. If we don't know who our Park District commissioners are, if we've never met one of our city council's members, if we've never talked to our school board representatives, how do we then even communicate to them? We have a large immigrant population here that may not know all the civic rules that are available. So education on that, on how to communicate to our elected officials. But the flip side of that is educating yourselves to how to come to, looking out for events, reaching out to say, you don't have to come to my meeting, I'll come to your meeting, and I'll show up where you congregate and where, your activities are. I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I will just add, programming should reflect the diversity in the community. Leadership should reflect diversity in the community. Our, schools, teachers should reflect the diversity in our community. And I go back to what I said earlier about having a seat at the table, or my table on a Friday night. My table on a Friday night, again, does not consist of people who just look like me. Mm-hmm. And it would be very boring if it did. And so you're not going to get diversity of thought, diversity of anything, if you don't have different people represented. So absolutely, programming should reflect the community diversity. Mark, just wanted to add what you said. I think, is there progress being made? Anytime there's conversations taking place, progress is being made. We need to continue the conversations. And then there's always more work to be done, right? But the fact that there's conversations taking place, there's progress, but we have to make sure that we continue those conversations, and that, the right people are part of that as well.
Perfect. I think Rhonda's got a question, and then we'll get to Cater. By the way, just a brief statement that I do. Cater is running for school board, and Vince Ori also joined us. He's also a candidate for city council. Okay, maybe towards the end we might get a brief thing there. But Rhonda, what is your question or your comment?
So my comment was kind of to the point of bringing the diversity to the board, as well as representation. That's been definitely one of my talking points. Even in discussions with people about the sorts of things they would like to see. I did my own research of other park districts nearby and far. I looked at Chicago, and I also looked at Aurora, and they have some offerings that are definitely a little more reflective of the community that they're in, and not just like for ethnic diversity purposes, but like abilities. There in Chicago, they had programs for people who wanted to play wheelchair sports, things like that. And I mean, clearly we'd have to see how much these sorts of things would be utilized, and make it worthwhile and make it a way that will actually serve people, and not just lip service, like, look, we have wheelchair sports, if it's not actually done properly. But I think there's nothing stopping us from doing that, and I definitely would like to look into doing those sorts of things. I remember when I was in college, in undergrad, my roommate was from India, and every year our school had an international festival. And she would teach us a dance from her country, and she would bring us clothing from her country, and we all got to wear and to perform the dance with her. And then there was always food served, and it was just a wonderful experience. And I would love to see something like that happen. And if there's anything the Park District can do to make that happen, I would absolutely be on board with supporting the initiative to get that going.
Perfect. Thank you. If you're done, Rhonda, Cater, your comments, please. Questions?
Sure. Hey, thank you, Mark. Thank you for hosting this. As always, I wasn't the first one, so thanks for continuing. That's really appreciated. Now, first of all, thanks to Kim and Sally, right, and all the things that both of you guys do, right? Like, I take a lot of inspiration from what you guys do. So, please continue to do it. And, you can count on my support and a lot of our community members' support in any shape, size, or form. As Mark had alluded to, right, I'm running for the school board. See, part of the thing that I've been very focused on, I've explicitly put in my platform as well, is that we need to work with the council, with the local, park commissioners, and a lot of the local authorities and local, advisory forums, right? Because that becomes an important way. We are not only educating our kids, right, in one way, and then the parents are actually pulling them, or the community is pulling them the other way. We need to get that synergy of the education across the board, right? That equity of education information being passed on is going to be pretty important. And I think I'm glad to hear a lot of the council and the park district, commissioners are willing to kind of join hands and trying to work together, right? I think we need to, at least lean on champions like Kim and Sally to kind of help drive that, right? Because that is going to be an important part. If we all look back and say what legacy we all left, is that equitable legacy that we actually left is going to be important, right? So I wanted to share it because, that's important. Like, it shouldn't be just like Kim and Sally trying to carry that. Like, we should all kind of carry that together.
Yeah. If I can just add, I think it's great. I love your point about, it sounds like, the importance of collaboration, right?
Mhm.
Like, all these different groups should be working together. When you think about the council or the city works, they do a lot of work with our nonprofits. I run a nonprofit in town. So, a lot of those services that we provide, the city does not have, while they support us, imagine what it would cost if they had to provide those services. So that collaboration piece is key. So the city collaborating with the school and the park district and all of those things are very important. And I think, just a couple things to what you said, Cotter, just about, the importance of, when you're looking at who to support in these elections, right? I think it's important to make sure that these candidates do speak to diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's been so many great strides that have happened. When you think about how our schools are, always consistently in the top in the country, it's not just because, we have great teachers and all that, but it's also because of the diversity piece of it. What are the things to make sure we're closing that achievement gap? And all those things are important. So if you're not asking those questions of folks who are running for school board and making sure that they have answers for that, in addition to obviously, how we're going to, continue to open safely and all of that. All those things are important. When you look at the park districts, Rhonda just brought up a really great point about wheelchair. Some of these other programs have, a wheelchair program, if you will, for kids in wheelchair. Our kids should not have to go to Bolingbrook or other park districts in order to participate in those types of programs. So, we have people here who can, if we look at the demographics in our own city, we should make sure we have representation in programs that, can be there for folks that need them. And so, I think I'm going to always be that person. I'm a champion of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it needs to be something that's at the forefront.
That's awesome. Okay, I think that this has been, for me, we've been doing this for 7 weeks. We've had a lot of candidates. We've had a lot of different discussions. But this one, to me, has been one of the best so far, and probably one of the most important. I think that, what events do we have planned coming up for Naperville Neighbors United? When is your next meeting? How do people join you? Those kind of things, the important aspects too, because you're doing important things. So let me shut up and have you answer.
So I'll just talk really quickly, just early, obviously 2020, and we had the pivot word, like everyone had to pivot. So we pivoted pretty quickly, and we put on a number of programming virtually for folks to have access to. So making sure that people knew who the nonprofits were that were providing services, bringing on our schools to talk about resources for kids, we talked about mental health. We talked about so many different things. And now that we are, slowly working towards the new normal and what that's going to look like moving forward. As soon as we can get back in person, we're going to, obviously pivot back to doing things in person so that we can be together and put on some of these events. One thing that we're looking at doing is we did receive some SECA funding to put on a Juneteenth celebration. But we don't know what that's going to look like, right?
That's really cool.
Right, yeah, but we don't know if we're going to be able to do things like that in person just yet. So, we've been really mindful of that, and obviously we're going to follow all guidelines that we need to. So, I'll let Sally add to.
Yeah, and to Kader's point and Mark, your point about bringing the community together and having all the stakeholders work together, that's one of the wonderful things about Benny and Kim's leadership with Naperville Neighbors United. I have a monthly event for PDAC. So we have our schedule set, but we, about 5-6 years ago, we started a book reading, and we picked really difficult books sometimes. We did White Fragility. This year we're doing Stamped in April. We've done The Growth Mindset, Outliers, and then had discussions about them. But in the last 2-3 years, Naperville Neighbors United is our partner. 203 has our partner. Pages, Paces, and Paths, which represent our African-American students in 204. They're our partners. The Naperville Library is our partner, and they're making sure there are enough copies of the book. Aurora Library. So that's where I want us all to think. I'd love to somehow get the Park District involved, sit by a tree and read a book. I mean, what a great, thing. Here are the great spots if you want to sit outside during COVID to read a book with your family. And here's a book that our whole community is reading, or maybe even have a Naperville book that we discuss. It doesn't have to be all these groups, just pick a book. So there are a lot of fun ways to make sure that we're connected, that we're discussing still important topics, and we're having fun. I think if you can make a combination of those three factors, you have like the trifecta of people coming out and being involved.
It looks like we have quite a few more questions, people interested. So let me cut over quick to Vince. Vince, you're next.
Hi, Vince.
Thanks. Hi. Yeah, it's been great listening to everybody today. I think we're all running because we feel like we're being left behind in one way or another, and I feel the same way as a senior citizen. We have been in our area have been left behind, and I love to have this conversation, and I love that we're talking about it, and I think we can all do something about it. But we have to look at everybody, the young, the old, and everybody in between. And we all have our feelings. And when they get hurt, that inspires us to run for office and say, hey, why don't you guys listen to me? And if we get enough people running for office in a variety of different skills. Today, I heard a lot of good things. I would vote for any one of the people that I heard today. And I think they have that feeling that we're a little bit left behind in some areas. And whether it's racial diversity or whether it's an age diversity or whatever it is, we should all get together and figure out a way to help everybody else. And not just one group, but all the groups. Because, we all live in Naperville, we all pay taxes in Naperville, and we should all be included in the voice of what's going on in Naperville. So it's good to be here. It's good to listen to other people. And I've learned a lot today, and I'm willing to learn more. So good luck to all the candidates, and we'll see you on April 3rd.
April 6th.
Well, thanks, Vince. You can actually start voting yesterday by mail, the 22nd early mail voting, and of course April 6th is when the polls open. Marilyn, I think you're next. I accidentally said sorry about that, confusing Rhonda and Cater. We'll get to you, I promise. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Yeah, okay, so just two things. I mean, Naperville is a lot different than the Naperville that I moved to in 1987, and that I think that's wonderful. That doesn't mean that there's not more to do. And I love the efforts by Naperville United. And I also just wanted to give a shout out just for Mark for organizing these. That I mean, it's great to have
Thank you.
an informal way for all the different silos of the residents, the park district, and city council to meet. It's one thing, for council and either the school board or council member and the park district maybe to talk about one issue, but just something informal where people can chat like this is just really wonderful. And I wanted just to give a shout out and thank you for doing this.
Well, it only happens because interested and involved people like yourself get out here, share your opinions, and this is really what makes America great, is participation. My biggest complaint about the municipal election is simple, is that too few people participate in it, and it's the most important one. It affects your taxes, it affects your zoning, it affects development at schools and parks, For me, on a very selfish reason, I've really enjoyed meeting my fellow candidates and learning about the different perspectives of what the park district is after, the township candidates. It's been a great process, So I enjoy it and thank you very much. But really, this is a collaborative effort. Thank you for saying it. Yeah, nice to say Mark, but it's not Mark. It's all of us together making this happen, and that's what really matters.
Yeah, but you pulled it together. And again, thanks for everyone and again, it's not just hosting the event, but it's everyone who comes in. So yeah. Thank you all.
Hopefully you'll continue to do these. So
Yeah.
We've got 5 more. And
but why stop? Why stop?
Well, if elected, I would do it from the bias.
Yeah. If not.
Okay, even if not, we'll see. We certainly the real reason for this is just what you're saying. As a candidate, we've been through so many of the 2-minute speech type of things.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, I've been joking that I could probably give 3 or 4 of the other candidates speeches.
Probably.
Because I know it very, very well. Okay.
Yeah.
So for what it's worth, and this is really what counts as community input, community involvement, and I know he probably doesn't want me to say his name again, but in fact, he is a man who I see at the center of everything. This is exactly the type of citizenship that really is there, to be out there, to be involved, to make things happen. Every time I turn around, I see his name associated with some other activity. I don't know if he sleeps. I don't know if
He doesn't.
all I know is he does
He
meeting
doesn't.
after meeting after meeting, and I'm just a fraction of what he's doing. So I just want to say thank you for your involvement. Okay,
Can I add to that? May I add to that? I will say there's a saying everybody has heard: when someone shows you who they are, believe them. I would say that about Ashvac. Like, he shows you who he is. He's such a good person. I mean, we have a lot of great people in Cotter, folks that I know personally on this call. That I, do a lot of great work. But can I just add to something that Vince said? I want to just kind of piggyback on what Vince said.
Please.
You are so right when it comes to seniors, right? Mm-hmm. Our seniors been left behind. So 10 years ago, I moved my mom and dad to live with Vinny and I. And thankfully, my husband, first of all, said yes. Actually, he was the one that really encouraged it. My mom was in ill health and wanted to, bring her here. And when I talk about like diversity at the table, right? So clearly I know my mom and I know my dad and all of that. But once I brought them here to live with us, I started to see things even differently from their vantage point, and things that, that I noticed that, seniors oftentimes, to your point, left behind. And so I started to be more of an activist, if you will, for our seniors in our community, specifically my own parents, and realizing that there were things that we needed to make sure that we're doing. So you are so right. We have to make sure, when we talk about diversity, it is inclusive of so many different groups, demographics, and we have to make sure that they're all included. And there are some things that I think that we need to make sure that we are doing, especially around our seniors. I run a nonprofit that helps people look for work. Seniors, if you will, because they want to categorize seniors as 55 and older, are discriminated against daily in the workforce, right? And so we need to make sure that we're on top of that as well. So thank you for sharing that. And it's a huge passion of mine. And my mom did pass away, but my dad is still with me, and I'm still, focused on making sure that, he is not quote unquote left behind, that he gets all the things that he needs as well.
That's awesome. Rhonda, I believe you're next. Do you have some statement or questions? Please.
Oh, yeah, I just was wondering if you, Kim, first of all, super excited about the idea of a Juneteenth celebration. I've been thinking about something like that for a while.
All right, we'll bring you on the team to help.
Yeah.
Yes, I was going to say, can you drop information on how we can volunteer for some of these things?
Yeah, we'll do.
Okay, that was the new statement. I just wanted to see how we can get on board with it.
That's super. Cater, you had one more, another comment?
Just a quick comment. I really appreciate what Kim, specifically on the senior citizen side, because I have both my parents live with me. My dad passed away about a year ago. My mom is still with me, and I can completely understand what Kim was saying and what Vince is saying, right? I think that is important for us, right? Is that equity piece is like, age shouldn't matter, right? Like everybody should be included onto this. Knowing Saley and Kim, I'm actually going to give them a quick challenge where I am willing to sponsor an event at NCTV 17 if they come back with some really creative ideas in pulling this messaging that they're talking together. I'm happy to sponsor it. So that's a challenge. I know those both love it.
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. And then you put us together. You just wait.
You have no idea what you just opened up.
It's
I'm
okay.
texting you right now, Sally. I'm texting you right now.
Absolutely.
I just have to say, Cotter, too. Like, I had the privilege of meeting Cotter. Maybe April? I think is when we first met. April or May. Yeah. I mean, just a stalwart guy. Like,
thank you. Thank you.
Agreed.
Yeah. So you have my support. So I really
thank you.
Mark, I just had one, I just thought of it as we're talking about seniors. I was invited a few years back to the Aurora Library, the one in downtown Aurora, and they had this beautiful sensory garden connected to it. And it was for children, that may have some sensory issues to it, but it was also for seniors who had dementia or Alzheimer's, and it was very fenced in, it was locked, they had some cameras there, it came from the library only. So I was just so impressed by it, because a library or a park is somewhere where, we often go with multi-generational people in our family, but there's not always something for everyone to be able to do except just sit on a bench. So Allison, that was just a thought that I had, and I hope to see that more even in small areas, or connected to, again, as we're talking about partnership, Ashfaq is on the library board, so I'd love to find a little spot near our library where they can do that.
Yes, Ali, definitely.
I see that we have a few more hands up. Cater and Vince, are your hands up?
No,
before?
No.
You know?
It's my age catching up with me as well. I forgot to lower it.
Okay. I think in that case, we're nearing we have a few minutes left here in the hour. So I'd like, Jim, you had a quick comment or statement. I'd like you to do it. And then Vince, I'll close out with you. And then we'll close up here around 1. Okay.
All right. Well, again, Mark, thank you for providing this opportunity. It's definitely been very helpful. I'm obviously one of the fortunate ones that haven't had a lot of bad experiences in my life due to my ethnicity or my religion. Growing up and living in the 60s, living in Arkansas and Oklahoma and states like that, I saw a lot of things that fortunately weren't happening to me that affected my perspective on a lot of things. And so I guess that's kind of the reason why when I attended the BLM protests and so forth, I just kind of stood back and watched more. For me, watching and hearing and listening to people teaches me more, because there's a lot of it I just can't personally have a difficult time empathizing on a certain level with the experience, because it's never happened to me, and it's really hard to empathize with somebody and their experiences if you haven't had a similar experience. And I really haven't had any really strong negative experience based on my religion or my ethnicity. It just didn't happen to me. I'm not of that age group where Germans, you know, my grandparents faced stuff for being German, but I didn't, because I'm old enough that had all gone away by the time I got to that. So I do have a tendency to just sit back and watch more than anything else. What's really been shocking for me is some of the things I've seen posted on social media. And they're being posted by people from Naperville. And it's really, I mean, I never kidded myself into thinking that there is no racism. Like Kim pointed out, it exists. Prejudice and racism exists in all societies at all levels. There's no exceptions. There are no exemptions to that. So I've never kidded myself that it doesn't exist. I was just shocked at how much of it really existed in our own community. I really didn't expect that. There was just a post the other day. Somebody put a meme up about this being Stop Blaming White People Month. And it was just like, oh my God, you know, seriously, you just don't get it. White people have always been the people in the leadership roles. They've always dominated. They've always controlled. They've always been people in power. The reason white people get blamed is because they were the ones that were in power and made the decisions that have resulted in the situations that caused the problems. And when you post something like that, you just don't seem to understand that that's the reason white people are the focus, is because they excluded people, diversity. They prevented diversity. And as a result of that lack of diversity, they made themselves the target. And you can't sit there and cry about it after the fact, because your parents, your relatives, you on a certain level, you participated in that. And to sit there and say it's not fair, geez, I'm sorry, but there's a lot of unfairness in the world, and you just have to suck it up and deal with it. The reality is white people have been a source of a lot of problems, and it's only natural that they become the focus of the issues. And admittedly, I'm not saying every white person out there is a problem causer. You know, there are a lot of people out there, they work hard. I mean, you look in the 60s, you saw a lot of white people not hesitating to stand up with the different minority groups and different ethnicity groups and take the peltings and the beatings that they were taking alongside them. There are obviously people very committed to that, and they're willing to stand up like that. But the reality is there is a culture there that is undeniable. And you can't sit there and say, well, I didn't do it, I didn't participate in it, it's not fair, I'm being picked on. That just doesn't cut it.
So, Jim, and I just want to say, I mean, you know, you started this by saying like, you know, like you're not empathetic or what have you, but I think, I mean, you are, and I've seen, you know, you're someone that I've noticed that will call things out, and the fact that you showed up at the BLM protest and the fact that you are, you know, aware. I mean, don't say that this is what you're not doing. I think you know, everybody's approach is different, and everyone has to get to it come to it in a maybe quicker for some and not so much for others. But I've seen things you've posted and stuff, and I appreciate what you bring to the table. So don't be too hard on yourself on that.
Yeah, I'd like to, okay, we are getting near the end of it, but I do want to get Ashfaq in, and then Vince, I'll go back to you after Ashfaq. Okay, he hasn't spoken yet, so please.
Thank you so much, Mark. So I usually join these events to learn. And Mark, I have been learning a lot of things from this particular events, and I met so many good candidates on this Zoom, as well as friends, I can say, you know. So thank you so much for hosting such events. And it is lovely to hear Kim always. Kim, you have been a super lady for us in Naperville, and you motivate and encourage all of us in a big time, I guess. And Sally is a good friend where we chat, talk to each other at 12 o'clock in midnight, morning 6 o'clock, we are there for each other. It's like this, you know. So we discuss about issues, concerns, and how we can help people. So these are the three major things because issues definitely we will keep on getting it. But the solution is important. So we need to talk about more solutions. Like Jim was saying about social media. So on social media, it is like an ocean. everybody want to jump into that ocean. So there are sharks, there are ships, there are people, everybody, you know. But now we need to start thinking about solutions on that social media. So Mark, my request to you is that if you can host an event next in couple of weeks about social media, invite some
Interesting.
leaders.
Yes, I'll see if we, we'll see if we can get it. I think that, Ian has made a big point in his campaign about the need for, to return to civility, to do that. I think we all agree with that. And I think that really some of the points that were made earlier by both Sally and Kim is that showing up is an important thing, and calling people out on inappropriate behavior is an important thing, that we really have to take an active role in these situations. And when people are out of bounds, we need to say, hey, you're out of bounds. This is not right. We need to come back and have mutual respect. I'm very heartened by it because this proves it right here. Look at us today. This is a beautiful opportunity. I can't tell you, I can't thank everyone so much for their participation today. Okay, I promised Vince I'd give him another shot, but we don't normally run over an hour, but this is such an extraordinary event. I'm willing to go longer if you are, but Vince, what's on your mind? I still see
Mark, I just wanted to close with a small note. Is that so we should invite community leaders and host a social event, on social media. And in last 4.5 years, I have seen so many hate against me. People have written and they told me, because I'm very active on social media, on all fronts, whether it is political, social, or any other, so I'm on that. So people, send me messages, go back to your country, why you are here in this place, all those things, So I've been engaging those people, bringing those people to our side, So I thought of sharing this experience also.
Yeah, if you treat people with respect, even if they don't treat you with respect, this is how the process begins. The process begins by being the better self, I believe, and bringing that to everyone in the community. Vince, I know you're dying for it, so go for it.
Just real quick. I've lived in the same house for 50 years, right in the middle of the historic district. We established the historic district, and then we watched it being torn away from us. So I have no regrets about living in Naperville. I love the diversity and the different types of people. But, because I was a senior citizen, it seemed like the developers took over and did whatever they wanted to do. And development is good for Naperville, but there has to be some reasonable way of doing it that recognizes the history and the Preservation Society and the other societies that have been around trying to maintain the history of the city, which is a great city. And I have no hard feelings about that at all, but we have to preserve some of the history too. So
just because we're one of the best cities in America doesn't mean we can't be better. And I'll tell you right now, I can say clearly with leaders like Kim, Sally, and Ashfact out here, we're propelling ourselves forward to these goals. We have run past our time, so unless anybody has anything else to say, I just want to thank everybody for really.
I always have to speak. I get one more, just one more. I just want to just go back to Allison one more time about what she was talking about in terms of the things that the Park District offers. We really need to. I'm excited to see what you guys. What the makeup of that board's going to look like and what could possibly happen as well. My kids are older now, so I'm not as connected in that way with the Park District, but I love to go, walking and all of that. But I love the ideas that I've heard you guys talk about on recent calls. So yeah.
It is the most exciting place because if there is something that really needs to change, it's the park board.
Yeah,
when you look at the picture of the park board, you think, is this 1957?
Yeah, I won't comment on that, but I will just say during this pandemic, my husband and I, on Saturday mornings, especially with our kids when they were here during the summer, both kids, we would find a different park to go. Who knew we had all these beautiful parks in our state? That was kind of our Saturday morning thing, is grab a cup of coffee somewhere and go walk in one of these areas. So, yeah.
How
That's awesome.
fortunate are we that we live in a city, an actual city where we can do that, where we have
Yeah.
all this green space.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
it's incredible.
I wish every American could have it live in a city like Naperville.
Yeah.
It's a great one. It can be better, but it's a great one. So I gotta say, it's time to go. Lunchtime's up for us, and I've really
Thanks, everybody.
appreciate. Thank you so much for your participation here. Really, really great to see you all. With your candidates, all good luck, and
Yeah.
we'll be seeing you soon. We have 5 more left. Okay,
5 more.
we run 12 of them. We had 5 more left. I love the idea about social media. I definitely want to do that. There's that. We'll see if we can get some. Maybe you can give me some suggestions on some panelists aspect too.
I can add you. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe we can work on that one together. That'd be awesome. Thanks.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody. Again,
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
this has been a great one.
Take care.
Bye-bye.